Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's or this morning's live stream, wherever you may be. And hi to those staying up late in Asia as well. So thanks for joining. Today's all about Capture One on the iPad. So we're going to look at a bunch of new stuff that was added yesterday and also since its release. If you haven't picked it up since day one, there's been quite a few changes and additions as well. So it'll give you a chance to get updated on the app if you've never seen it before, and also what's new. Apologies for the bulky microphone here. This decided to die, the lavalier mic, just before I started, so that's going in the bin. So apologies for that, but hopefully you can still hear me good. Before we get to looking at the iPad, for those of you on YouTube, you're very welcome to ask questions. So if you pop them in the comment box, that will come straight through to me. For those of you in our live streaming room, you can ask a question in the Q&A tab, and that will either go to me or also to my buddies in the customer service department. So we've got Victor, Helen, Marianne actually hanging out in the chat as well. So you're going to be well helped out today. So any questions, do please go ahead and ask those. So without further ado, we're going to take a look at the iPad. Now, just a little technical note. This is the iPad that I'm using, so you can see. I'm just sharing the screen wirelessly at the moment because I'm going to connect a card reader. Obviously, if I'm sharing the screen with a cable, I can't connect the card reader. Now, the only disadvantage with this wireless screen sharing is that the screen quality isn't that good. So once we've imported some pictures, I'm going to plug in USB, and then you'll see an improvement in the screen quality. So it's a little bit fuzzy right now, so I do apologize for that, but it will be better once we've finished our import. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is a brand new install, pretty much. So there's nothing in it right now. You can see Capture One is empty. Let's fix this. There's a number of different ways that we can import. So we can import from a card, which I'm going to do in a minute. You can import from your Photos application, so iOS Photos. You can see these icons down here. If you can connect directly to your camera, I'm looking over here, but you guys can't see it. But if you can connect directly to your camera, you can shoot tethered, or if the camera is set up as a storage device, then you can import direct from the camera or from a hard drive, hence this little SSD icon, or from a memory card. So lots of different ways to get pictures into the iPad. So I'm going to attach this rather overly large card reader, which is a SanDisk Pro, but it is very fast. So there is definitely a benefit to having this slightly ridiculously big card reader, is that it does have a pretty nice import speed. And if you're conscious, running out of hands, for getting the fastest import you can, obviously the speed of the card is going to have a bearing on that as well. So let me connect this up like so, and then you should see Untitled has popped up down here. So I'm going to tap on that. That's going to show me the contents of the card. I don't have a whole bunch of stuff to import. It's not very exciting for you to watch me import thousands of pictures. So there's 50 odd, I think, here, and they're shown by date, like so. So if there was photos spread over a few days, they would be split up by date or day. I'm just going to tap Select All up the top here, and that's 48 photos selected, and we're going to say import. So it's as simple as that. Slightly different process for importing from the files section, but we'll look at that afterwards. Progress wheel is this guy spinning just up here. So that's giving us an indication of how quickly the import process is taking place. These are files from a Sony a7R4. 4 or 5, I can't remember. So they're fairly hefty. They're about 123 meg each, so it's relatively large amount of data. Progress wheel is kicking off now because it's just creating the previews, but if you want to go ahead and start editing pictures, you don't have to wait for that progress bar to finish. So happy with the import. So what I'm going to do is pull that plug like so, just toss that to the side, and let's connect USB, switch the screen sharing over to that so the quality is a little bit better. So hopefully, let's have a look in a second. It takes a couple of seconds to pop up sometimes. It's going to prove me a liar in a minute and not work at all. Let's just do that one more time. If not, we go back to wireless sharing. It of course worked perfectly this morning. There we go. So just needed a little prompt. Okay. So we've got our pictures into the iPad. Simple as that. You can see up on the top left-hand corner here, it says latest import, 48 pictures, nothing in the trash, and so on. Just going to pick up a question here from Happy Nick. Which iPad would you recommend for Capture One on an iPad? iPad Pro versus Air. I think it depends what you want to do with it, to be honest. This is an iPad Pro. It's not the biggest one. It's the slightly smaller one. So I think if you're going to hammer it, then it's worth having the Pro. Certainly M1 spec makes a fairly substantial difference. If you look on our support site, support.capture1.com, there's actually a recommended list of iPads or supported ones. You can use older ones. I've got an ancient iPad mini, which it does work on, but it's so old, it's not, you know, super speedy really. It struggles to run Apple News, so you can imagine running an imaging application is more of a challenge. And if you're going to shoot tethered, forgive me, Happy Nick, I can't remember what the iPad Air ships with, but the Pro has a USB-C port, which is obviously a lot more convenient for tethering, because on the Lightning port, which I believe Jordan was asking, with the Lightning port you have to buy the Apple camera dongle, which then allows you to connect, but then you've got like an extra thing hanging off the side of your iPad, which is less convenient. All right, so we've got our pictures into the iPad. What I would recommend you would do as a first step is to create yourself an album, because as you import once more, latest import is going to change to the next import. So I'm going to make a new album. Let's just call this Iceland. I mean, all of this is pretty intuitive because it's built on the touch interface, of course. Now I want to select all of these. So we've got our select mode up here in the top right hand corner. So I'm going to select all and then simply say add to, and add them to this album like so. And tap add up here. Helps if you tap it. And now you can see we've got 48 pictures inside this album. Now if I was to do another import, so let's just grab some from my files. So this could be an external hard drive, it could be yeah, like a SSD as I mentioned, or in this case I'm going to grab some off my iCloud drive. So let's go for I'll just select 4 pictures up the top here, like so. Slightly different interface for importing from files because it's based on the iOS interface. So now if I open these, it's going to import those 4 pictures. Now you can see the latest import, shows these 4 pictures and has not removed, but of course the latest import is just the latest import. But all images can be seen in the all images collection. So if I scroll down, you can see those pictures there, like so. So all of that, I don't perceive you to really have any issues with that, to be honest. It's all pretty simple and intuitive. Now, one thing Capture One for iPad is not, it's not a like-for-like design to Capture One Pro. That's intentional. If we just put up Capture One Pro for a second, there's Capture One Pro, and here is Capture One on the iPad. The reason why it's not like for like is because Capture One Pro, of course, was never designed to work on a touch interface, whereas Capture One Pro for the iPad is, of course, designed for a touch interface. So gestures, the way the tools are laid out is all built around that. Not everybody, of course, uses an iPad with a keyboard. I mean, the whole point of having an iPad is generally to be a bit more mobile and a bit more portable. So not everyone's using a keyboard, touchpad, or whatever. We can use an Apple Pencil, and there's actually a really nice way to use this, which I'll show you as well. But the good news is, even though it's not a like-for-like lift Capture One Pro and stick it on the iPad, the engineering behind it in terms of image quality is exactly the same. So it still uses Capture One's image core, which is our, if you like, internal name for the photo processing. So the image quality is no different whatsoever. It's identical on the iPad to Capture One Pro. So you're not taking a step back in image quality. Okay. So what we're looking at now is the gallery view, and of course, as I just said, it's a touch interface, so there's a couple of different things we can do here. If you want to see your pictures smaller, you can just pinch them down like so, and then have smaller images. If we want to make them bigger, then we can pinch up like so. So that's why you won't find a slider or anything like that. It's just far simpler to do that pinch gesture like so to change the size. Also up in the gallery view, we've got a filtering option. So if you were importing JPEG and RAW, then you can filter to a particular file format there as well. Now I only imported RAW, so it's only showing me the current file format. Star ratings and color tags we'll look at in a minute, and then you've got your sorting options in the top there. If you want more space in the gallery view, you can of course just hide that sidebar as well. As I said, most of you will just happily figure all this out yourself without the need to listen to me. But we'll get into some more detailed, granular stuff as well. Okay, so if we go into our first picture, let me just check my settings. I just want to make sure I've got something turned off. Yep, I'm going to come back to that in a second. So in terms of rating and tagging and how the interface works, on the left-hand side, don't be offended if you're left-handed because we can switch it in a second. You'll see there. On the left-hand side, we've got our different tool categories, and the first one of these is star rating and color tags. So very obviously, I can swipe up and down to apply a star rating. I can tap once to apply a color tag. And you can see that just down here on the bottom left of the picture. You can see, and also in the gallery as well, we've got that color tag and the star rating listed down there. Couple of other gestures when you're perhaps rating or tagging pictures. First of all, a change from the original release of this is that when you switch pictures, the star rating and color tag menu used to disappear and you'd have to go and open it again, which is very frustrating. Now it stays up. Double tap obviously takes us to 100%. And I obviously can't swipe between pictures here because I'm scrolling around them, but if I tap on the browser, then it will move to the next picture in the same location and the same zoom level. That's another improvement, which again, it was very frustrating that switching between pictures, it would take you back to the zoomed out view. So this makes sense if we're looking at a picture like this. Which one do I prefer? Well, I happen to prefer this one, so I'm going to tag that green. And then same if we go here, I can perhaps tag that red. So it stays at the same zoom level and location. Other gestures we can use in this view, double tap, as I said, 100%. If I tap once, takes us to a full screen view, like so. So just removes all the distraction of the tools. Tap once to go back before. If I just quickly apply a style on this, let's go for something relatively soft. There we go. If I long tap, then it shows me before and after. So if it's easier to see on the interface, before and after like so. Even in full screen mode, if I tap once and long press, we can see before and after. So a very speedy way to nicely review what changes you've made. Now going back to that star rating side of things, or color tagging, if we dive into our preferences for a second and then look at preferences here, we've got auto select. So this is a feature that is coming from Capture One Pro. So if we turn these on, that means the photo will auto select when we, sorry, auto advance, not auto select, auto advance when we add a color tag or a star rating. So once again here, if I go to this picture and we give this a 5-star rating, then straight away it goes to the next picture. So we don't have to go and star tag star, rate or tag, and then advanced, we can just tap on the star rating that we want to have and it goes to the next picture. So it's nice and speedy and nice and fluid like so. Simple. So that pretty much covers those sort of gestures that you can use generally in the iPad and also when we're star rating or tagging. Oh, last one, 2-finger tap takes you up to, opens up the histogram like so. If you want to see exposure warnings, you can turn them on here as well, exposure warning on and off. Personally, I think it'd be nice to have a gesture for that, but probably running out of fingers and hands and so on. All right, any questions so far? Thanks to my colleagues who have answered everything there. Yes, that's good. So we've got no open questions, or at least no common questions at the moment. All right, what's next? In terms of easy ways to filter, we saw those filtering. So if I just filter to the green tags and I wanted to put those in an album, if I select and say select all, and then I can add to a new album. I don't have to have created that album first of all. So if I say plus, I just call this Lex, create, and then add to that. And then now I've got my selects over in that spot like so. So selects there, that was the originals, and those selects. Final thing that we can do, and before we move on to editing, is something called variants. So variants, if you know from Capture One Pro, and I should say this can be used as a standalone application fine. If you want to use it as a companion to Capture One Pro, because there are additional tools in Capture One Pro, you can do so, but you can go, obviously very far with the iPad as well. So variants, let's say you want to try a few different edits on your pictures, color, black and white, different styles or whatever, you can do so. So if I long press on the thumbnail itself, we get these few options here. New variant, clone variant, copy adjustments, and apply adjustments. We'll look at copy and apply in a sec. If we say new variant, that will give us a new variant without any adjustments. So if you remember, did this one have a style on it? My mistake. So it was one I didn't star tag. Let's just add a style to this guy. Let's go for K100. There we go. So if I click and hold this and say new variant, that will give me a virtual copy, but without any adjustments. So let's do that. So you can see it there like so. So that's with the style, that's without. If I long tap this one again and do clone, then it's going to clone it with those adjustments. And you can see now down here, those 3 variants represented. So very easy to do that, of course. Okay, let's go back into the full collection of pictures. Let's just look at a little copy paste scenario. So if we go into the styles here, let's pick up, so cable's in the way, let's pick up something, there we go, F200, that looks good. And now we can finesse our editing a little bit and look at how copy paste works. So I think you've picked up already how this two-handed interface works, if you like. So if we go to rotation, so we have our category on the left, and then we have this input dial, control wheel, whatever you want to call it, adjustment dial over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to pick something a bit more suitable for this shot. And the way it works is obviously to pick your category, and then you can increase or decrease the value. Something else which was added, I can't remember when, but since the original, is that we can spin this wheel. So before you kind of had to entice it up to the full values, and you can see the full value top and bottom. So I know I'm going +4 stops to -4 stops, but you can spin it like an actual physical wheel, which is really great if you need to do a larger adjustment. Then it's a lot more efficient to nudge it before refining. So if I want to bring down my highlights, I can grab the highlights tool like so, and then take those highlights down a little bit. Let's add a bit more contrast like so, and finally, some clarity. So you get the idea of how the editing interface works. Now, there was much debate about which direction the wheel should go in, depending on the tool. So by default, obviously, if I'm using something like Clarity, if I pull down, it spins the wheel to the most or the greatest value. If I go this way, we spin the wheel to the least value. But if for some reason you find that awkward, again, in the preferences, you can switch that behavior around if you prefer. So there was great debate in the early months days about which way the wheel should do what, but now it's up to you. You can choose exactly what it does. The final category down here is sharpening, noise reduction, film grain, and so on. For Fuji users, if I can remember where that is. Oh, this isn't a Fujifilm camera, but if you shot on Fuji, you will also find a film simulations control as well. So you can do that directly. If I want to rotate, again, similar story. I can just pull the rotation here, and we can crop as you would expect using the touch interface. So very simple. Now, if I want to copy and apply that across, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the copy and apply icons. So I can say copy, I can select. Remember, this turns on your select mode. So if I select those other pictures, I don't want that one. And then I can just apply by pressing that button down here at the bottom. And then those adjustments are applied across. Now, when you copy, let's just cancel out of that. So if I say copy again, you'll see modify pops up quickly, and then you can see which parts of the, which adjustments have been made and which are then copied from the clipboard or copied to the clipboard, like so. You see by default rotation isn't copied. So if you want to include that as an example, I could do. And then if I went to this one and said apply, then it's going to do the rotation as well. So again, similar behavior to Capture One Pro if you're using that. Jed is asking, can you use layers? Not currently. That's one of the features which isn't in there. So all the basic editing tools are in there. As I said, we added variants recently. We've added a bunch of stuff to Capture One Live, refinements to the UX, performance increases as well. So yeah, lots of different additions, but that doesn't mean we've stopped. As I mentioned to someone at the start, on our community forum at support.captureone.com, we have a place where you can request features. So if there's something you want to see on the iPad, then just go ahead onto our forum and request it, and then it goes straight in front of product management, developers, and everything. Dan says, when looking through the photos, is there a way to use the wheel to move forward from photo to photo? There isn't, but that's a nice idea though. So put it in the community forum. But that could be interesting actually to have a rotate through. But remember, Dan, you don't have to be right on the photo. I can just push from the side here like so, if you wish. So you don't have to be right in the middle. It can be a little discreet nudge like so. But it's a good suggestion. I like the sound of that. Okay. Okay. I hinted about what we can do with the Apple Pencil, which is a very expensive but very useful device for editing. But what I find, actually we're a little bit dark here. Let me just brighten that up. That's better. It's looking a bit gloomy, and just brighten that up a touch. For those of you who have Apple Pencils or are left-handed, you might find it easier to push the tools over onto the right-hand side. So again, we can say tools right up here in the preferences, and now everything is switched around. But what I much prefer to do, and it's one of my favorite ways to edit, and you don't actually need an Apple Pencil for this, it just works particularly nicely. So what you can do is, this picture is a bit on the gloomy side, so if we go to exposure and I long tap, then the whole screen becomes a slider. So if I go up, it gets brighter, and you can see the wheel spinning on the left-hand side, and if I go down, we decrease, like so. So I find this is by far the nicest way to edit. So I can focus on the image, I can see the value if I wish, and then when I let go, the tools come back. So if I wanted to add contrast, long tap, punch in some contrast, let's pull those highlights down like so. Find that a really nice way to edit. Now if you don't have a pencil, still works. So if I long tap, then again the whole interface or screen becomes a slider. So I find that really a nice way to edit. Certainly if you're holding the iPad for an extended period, I find it more comfortable with it just sat on my lap and then using the pencil as I mentioned. And you don't really lose any accuracy. You can see I can really fine tune this as I wish. So if you're looking for an excuse to buy a pencil, as I said, I know they're pricey, but it is nice. Then this is a good excuse if you feel the urge to buy some. Scott says, if I import images and shoot more on the card, will the next import ignore the previously imported ones? No, it doesn't. So that's why they're not selected by default. But I agree that could be a nice feature. Otherwise, yeah, you'll have to select the new pictures and then import those. But again, good feature. I'd say that would be worth a request. Okay, so let's just have a quick look through these preferences. So we saw the star rating, auto select, auto advance. If we look at keyboard shortcuts, if you're using a keyboard, then obviously we've got shortcuts for star rating and color tags, as you can see. Gestures, we've covered most of those. File format, show and hide, because that was something which certainly annoyed people. So if we go back to our gallery view, you can see it says raw in small letters. If I do a long press with 2 fingers and let go, then that disappears. So if you're only ever importing raw, it's kind of inconsequential. It's, yeah, sure, I know it's raw. So tap and hold with 2 fingers and it takes that away. Let's go for settings. Appearance just has a few little things about colors for exposure warning and so on. Histogram on and off, the tools right, you can see as well. Gestures, zoom to fit and so on. It's got the list down there. Oh, reset tool value, I forgot to mention that one. So yeah, if you find that you've edited a picture, let's say we want to reset my silly rotation. So on the wheel itself, if you double tap, it just takes it back to 0. And for cropping, I didn't mention, you've got aspect ratios built in there like so. I guess the only tool which might need a little bit more explanation is the color editor. So color hue saturation, not surprising, but how do you pick the actual color? So if I tap on the color editor like so, you can see the different color swatches over here on the left hand side, or I can pick the picker and push that to the color I want to edit, and then you'll see Capture One will show me which is the dominant color. So in this case, if I drop it on the grass in the background, then I can change the saturation, just if I wind that up or not, by using the adjustments as per normal before. Same for white balance. We've got our auto white balance, which is the magic wand. So if you see a magic wand around, that will auto white balance. So if I tap it once, it will show me what it's going to adjust, and then I can say auto adjust. If I go to another shot and long press, then it will do the auto adjustment anyway. Helps if you actually long press, David. So if I do a long press, there we go. Thought I was lying to myself then. Long press will do an auto adjustment. Nice. Any other questions so far? I think pretty well covered. Hans was saying, I think the default should be clockwise for plus and counterclockwise for negative. Yeah, so there was many a fight about which way it should be, but the good news is you can decide that on yourself. I personally didn't like the original way it was set up. I can't even remember what that was. But I personally didn't like it, and that's why I found that this was really the long press slide up and down was my preferred way of editing, and it still is that to this day, to be honest. I really like editing like that. So we looked at copy and apply. Just checking my notes. We checked variants. We've looked at gestures. We've looked at the pencil. So I think pretty much you get the idea of how the interface works. As I said, I don't foresee many of you would really struggle how to use it. New feature that was added yesterday, because now we're going to talk about exporting. So you'll see up in the top right hand corner, we've got our export dialog here. So if I just select, let's just select these 3 badly edited pictures, or 4 badly edited pictures, and then say export. And then that takes us to this export menu. I'll put the screen share up because it's a bit easier to see then. But you can see at the top, export for photos, file name or custom name. So you can add a custom name if you wish. And then you can export as JPEG, TIFF, originals, or EIP. So originals will just export out the raw file. EIP is a bit more useful because that will export the raw file with the adjustments embedded inside it. So it's very useful if you're, say, perhaps transferring them over to Capture One Pro. Now there are a number of different options you've got if you want to then move on to Capture One Pro, which is export as EIP and then airdrop as an example, or you could export as EIP and copy them onto an external hard drive attached to the iPad, move that over to your desktop, which can be useful if you're adjacent to your computer. So this is how I do it for 2 different scenarios. If I'm away from my computer and I've got the iPad, but I want to continue working on Capture One, I will put them on Capture One's cloud, because if I'm not going to be home for 24 hours, whatever, a couple of days, I did this recently and a short break up in Edinburgh, I just put everything on the Capture One cloud. And then when I got back home, I just pulled everything down. If I was in a situation where I wanted to instantly move from iPad over to Capture One, I would either export them to an external hard drive, or I would use AirDrop if I'm adjacent to it. So cloud, if I know I'm not in a huge rush, especially if there's hundreds and hundreds. If immediacy is the option, then AirDrop or using a hard drive is a great solution. So that's why we have the EIP option. But let's just export these 4 pictures. A new option that was added yesterday is custom. So now you can set a fixed size, a fixed width or height, or long edge or short edge. So let's just go for a web optimized picture. The custom options are pretty self-explanatory, but let's do web optimized. We can add a watermark if we wish. You can see that option. And then I'm going to go ahead and press export. So Capture One will prepare those images. You can see the progress wheel at the top. Once it's happy with those, you then come to this menu, which is a standard iOS menu, which allows you to share your pictures in any way. So there you see the AirDrop option. So if I'd done EIPs, I could have whisked them over to my laptop sitting next to me. If I hit save, so this second option here, then it will save them to the camera roll on the iPad itself. If we said copy, it will just copy them if I want to text, email, or whatever. Or I can save to files, Dropbox, or we could edit the actions to add more services. But if I say save 4 images, that will just drop them straight to my camera roll. Simple as that. 4 photos, save to photos. As I said, if you want to move over to Capture One Pro, it might make more sense to use cloud services. So if I do that, I'm going to make a new album. Let's just call this Iceland Cloud, like so. And then I'm going to say, no, I'm not. I'm going to put a picture in there first. I'm not going to do tons of pictures because you don't want to watch a file upload. That won't be exciting. And then I'm going to say add to cloud, like so. And then that will get uploaded to my Capture One cloud account, which I can then pick up off Capture One Pro. In the meantime, let me just check for questions once more. Can the size of the images in the film strip be changed? So the film strip down here, I don't think so, Dan. So they can be changed here, but I've got a feeling that does not, no. It does not change the size on the film strip. Let me just bring tools back right for a second. Sorry, tools back to the left. We can hide the film strip, but I'm pretty sure it is not an editable size as far as I know, just in that main gallery view. But that could be, again, a nice preference for the future. So again, request it, I think, Dan, on our support site makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's think about what we need to do next. Oh yeah, cloud transfer. So you can see that's now in the cloud. Lost my brain for a second. So let's move over to Capture One and look at that transfer, and then we can look at Capture One Live as well. So let's put this to one side for a second and move over to Capture One. And what you'll see up here on your toolbar, or hopefully, let's bring up the mouse locator. So on my toolbar, I've got this cloud transfer icon. If you don't see that, right click, customize toolbar, and you'll find it down here on the second row, and you can just drag that up on there. So if I tap on cloud transfer, it's going to check the contents of my cloud, and it says Icelandic cloud 1 minute ago, like so. And I'm going to import that to my capture folder. I'm in a session. Same process if you're using a catalog, you just pick the destination where you want it to go, or you can choose a folder. So I'm going to say import like so, and then pretty quickly it will pull that photo down. There we go. So that's brought that down from the cloud. Again, if there was any adjustments, I'm stupid really, I should have picked the picture I adjusted, but any adjustments will arrive with that. So as I said, it makes a lot of sense to use the cloud if immediacy isn't there. If you want to instantly get them from iPad to your desktop and you're sat right next to it, there's no real logic to pushing something to the cloud just to pull it back down again. So airdrop it, stick it on a hard drive. Those things make a lot more sense. Cool. Question from Jeffrey. Which version of the Apple Pencil am I using? Good question. I've got no idea. You tell me. Apple nerds out there. This is, as I said, it was an iPad Pro M1, which I got last year sometime, and then the Apple Pencil with it. I think it's version 2, if that makes sense to Apple experts. But yeah, it's whatever's appropriate or bought for the iPad Pro. All right, what's next? Let's talk about a new feature that was added yesterday for Capture One on the iPad, which is Capture One Live. Now, if you're not aware what Capture One Live is, it's a way to share a collection of pictures to the cloud and have your team member, client, whoever you're collaborating with, be able to instantly rate, tag, and comment on pictures, and also follow what you're doing. If you're shooting tethered, as an example, they can follow along with the shoot. It's a very simple process, so I'm going to run you through that. And let's share this collection of 48 pictures, I think we have, to my fictitious wedding couple. So let's do that. So if I tap on that, I can say share online, or I can press this button up here with the two guys next to each other, but I'm going to say share online. And then straight away we get this window that says manage access. So I'm going to add my fake email here, anyone review, and I'll show you what happens at the other end at gmail.com, like so. So this person that I'm inviting, myself, or my fictitious wedding couple, I'm going to allow them to rate, tag, and comment. So they have full access. But you as the photographer, you're in control of who has what level of access. So I'm going to invite this person, like so. I can also share just a generic link, and I can set a, if you like, group access for that. So I'm going to say, well, anyone with a link, I don't want them to have any access. I want to see who's working inside Capture One Live for me. But if I like, I can allow them to view only, or rate, tag, and comment. But I'm going to say no access. If I just check on my email for a second, and I'll bring Capture One up for you. So that's now, you can see the progress bar up here. That's now sent all of those pictures to the cloud. Now it's only low resolution, but it's plenty for someone to make a judgment on a picture. But we're not pushing 48, 60 megapixel files to the cloud. It's creating a lower res preview of that and then sending that to the cloud. So it's very, very efficient, just to be clear. So if we go back over to my desktop for 1 second, so you can see an email has arrived. You've been invited to a capture to a live session. Lucky me. So now if I click on this button, go to session, it's going to open another tab for me. And I need to verify who I am. So I can log into my Capture One account if I have one, or I can access with a code. So if I verify my email, yes, that's a match, lucky me. Again, if I go back to my inbox, here's my access code, like so. So if I do that and then paste that in here, I get straight into this Capture One live session, which is great. And I can see all the color tags and the star ratings that have happened so far. So let's go to our recognizable pony here and switch to, if I press the right button, yeah. So we can see the iPad and we can see Capture One Live just running on a web browser. Incidentally, you can load up the Capture One Live link on any web connected device. Doesn't have to be a laptop, it could be your phone. It scales to mobile really nicely. It could be another iPad, it can be an Android tablet, it can be a Windows computer, anything that can access the web. So if I find Senior Pony here, like so, and I'm going to change this. I like this pony, so I'm going to hit this with 5 stars. Whoops. So let's turn off the auto advance 1 second, because that'll be distracting. So you can see here, I set this to 5 stars. Look over here on the left, down here, you can see that instantly set the same in Capture One Live. If I go to Capture One Live and I just hit this with a green tag, straight away you can see down here, oh, it's not in focus, but you can see this has a green tag. So if I change this to red, let's go for a red tag, like so, then you'll see it synchronize across, like so. Change this back, oh sorry, orange tag rather, green tag, and now instance synchronization, like so. So my client can happily go through, they can go through all their pictures and then tag, well, let's just give this one a 5 star, we like that, that's 5 stars already. Let's give, whoops, wrong gesture, sorry, let's give this one a 5 star. Let's give this one 5 stars as well, and so on. And then of course what I can do, I can come back to my collection here, I can hit the filter and say, oh, 5 stars, great, this is what my client has picked. So my client has picked all these pictures that they want to have. So it doesn't involve any, you know, upload of, sorry, not upload, exporting JPEGs, sending those to your client, the client picking them, the client telling you which ones they want, you going through your collection of pictures and deciding which ones the client needs. It's a very laborious process. So this cuts out all of that middle action, if you like. Now, Capture One doesn't have to be running. So let's go ahead and quit Capture One, like so. We might as well quit NDI as we're there. And we're going to go back into Capture One Live for a second. Too many things going on. What do we want? This screen. So we're back in Capture One Live, and let's just go ahead and hit these ones of our handsome groom with 5 stars, like so. So now if I reload Capture One, so let's open up Capture One once more, and then where's our handsome dude? So he's down here. So we hit 1, 2, 3, that one, and that one with 5 stars. So this Capture One does not need to be open whilst your client works. If we go back to the Manage Access for a second, you can see our expiry here is 27th of May. So it's going to give me, yeah, approximately 1 month of access. At any point, I can, of course, kill that. So I can say stop sharing, and then that link will instantly die. But the high level of security, of course, means you are in exact control of who has access to your Capture One Live collections. Good news for you, Chris. He says, does it cost more money? Currently on the iPad, it's free. So you get all the features for free on the iPad. On Capture One Pro on version 23, you can share one collection for 24 hours. So it's free on the iPad for a limited period. I don't know what that period is yet, because we want everyone to try it, experience it, find the benefits for it, and so on. Otherwise, Chris, the cost for Capture One Live is, don't quote me on this, I think it's a $5 US add-on every month. Depends a bit on your currency, but I'm pretty sure for US dollars, it's $5 US. But it works on Capture One Pro, works on the iPad as well. So if you want a hyper mobile solution, because you can shoot tethered to the iPad as well, with a cable or wirelessly for supported cameras. Some iPads, of course, have cell connections as well, or you can use a hotspot. Then you could be shooting to your iPad tethered whilst they get loaded up to the cloud. And then your client can be reviewing in real time, which is pretty cool. Oh, one other thing I didn't show you. Let's bring these up side by side. So for the reviewer, these little binoculars up here in the top right-hand corner, you can see if I tap on that, this will follow the current edit. So if we go back to Lovable Shetland Pony and I just do a quick edit, so let's just make this a little bit darker, then what you'll see is in Capture One Live, it will catch up and then show me the edited picture. So if I just mess up the exposure for a second, and then those edits will go through and then updated in Capture One Live, like so. So someone can easily be following along with what you're doing. You know, do you like this picture? Should it be a little bit brighter? Are you happy with the horse munching on your wedding dress, and so on and so forth. So it's a great system, and to collaborate in a small team, a large team, or whatever, you can, don't forget, you know, I've only just shared this collection with one person, or myself, but of course, don't forget you can add multiple different emails. You've got the generic link as well. One thing which is really nice to do on a shoot, if you put this, so if I just copy that share link, if you put that share link into just any old QR code generator, Google Chrome will do it for you as well, bit.ly, and then you can show your client, here's a QR code, they can scan that with their phone, and then they can happily go ahead and review quite nicely. I'm kind of running out of hands to do everything at the same time, but if I go to live, let's just give view like so. So I'll change that. So now on my phone, just to show you, like, oh, you can saw it as well down here, I forgot. So now you can see that I'm looking at the collection on my phone as well. It's scaled nicely for the interface too. So I can add my star ratings, color tags, swipe through, zoom in, check for focus, and so on. So whatever device you have, it works really nicely. Great. So that's Capture One Live. I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to show you. What I will say, and there isn't really enough time to give you a super tight demo, but what we've also added on this version is wireless tethering as well. So wireless tethering for Fujifilm, I should say. So you've already been able to tether wirelessly for Sony cameras, Canon, and some Nikon models as well, like the Z9. But you can also now tether wirelessly with Fujifilm as well. So compatible cameras are up on our website. So you can always check for compatibility there. I don't know if this cable is going to be suitable or long enough, but if I just pull in the emergency Fujifilm X-H2 here, it's really plug and play for tether capture, so it's dead simple. So if I plug this in, helps if I turn that on. then what you'll find happen is that the camera will be detected. So you can see Fujifilm X-H2 like so. There's a little shutter release button down here. We've also got camera settings. What I would recommend you do when you start shooting tethering is create an album. So let's just call this captures. Create like so, and if you tap the little 3 dots next to it, you can say assign that as a capture album, and then that becomes your capture collection. So if I attempt to take a picture here with the lens cap on, which is always a killer move. As I said, we do a proper live stream of, don't know if it's going to focus this close with this little tiny cable. So there's my picture popping up onto the iPad pretty quickly as well. So easily done. Oh, actually, and that also went straight to Capture One Live as well, which is pretty cool. So you can easily share that, no problem at all. As I said, Fujifilm will shoot wireless as well, along with some other models. If you want to shoot to the iPad and to the card at the same time, that's also possible. So if you tap on this cogwheel here, this gets you into the settings menu for the camera in particular. And you'll see here, we've got this rather long-winded explanation here. It varies a little bit per camera, but this also shoots RAW to the card as well. So I get the RAW file straight back onto the card too. For Canon, you'll also find it on this menu. The only frustrating thing is that on Canon, if you turn the feature on to write to card as well, when you shut the camera down, it forgets it. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's just, unfortunately, the way the Canon is wired. So just remember to turn that back on when you do it. On Sony, you'll find it on the menu system itself. Nikon, again, it's in a slightly different place. So unfortunately, the camera manufacturers do things all a little bit differently, but it is possible mostly depending. We can hot plug, so I can just pull that plug out, and then we are dispensed with that. So what I would suggest, if you are tethering, of course, use a good quality cable. I saw someone who was trying to tether the other day, and they were using a USB-C to USB-A converter, and then a relatively low-grade cable, I would say, and tethering really wasn't happening. So treat tethering into an iPad like you would into the desktop. Make sure it's a decent cable. Don't go crazy with the length, and I say it's extremely reliable. If you want to know how to connect wirelessly, again, if you go to support.captureone.com, then you can find all the supported cameras, how to connect them, whether that's wired, wirelessly, and so on. Nice one. What I would like to talk about now, if I just press this button, what's coming up next. So if you wave your QR code scanning cameras towards those 2 different QR codes. So that's what's coming up next for live streams, May 4th and May 18th. So the first one, shape-based tools. That's maybe a funny way to describe it, but that's everything from auto-rotate, keystoning, cropping, using grids and guides, a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not something we've covered for a long time, and I think it definitely makes sense. And then I'm really happy to have April joining me on May 18th. She's a great public speaker. She's going to take us through a color grading process, but a little bit different in that we're going to take the same photo and we're going to do it in 2 different ways, and talk about inspiration of color grading, which way to go, which tool she's going to use, and so on. So I'm really looking forward to that with April. I will leave those up on screen. When we finish, I will put them back on screen as well, if you need a little bit of time to scan those. Final few questions. Kling says, that's really great. Yes, it's awesome feature, definitely Capture One Live. Please try it out. If you're on the iPad you can get free for 7 days, and it's a pretty low subscription fee after that as well. But it's a super awesome service to go mobile. Rocky says, how do you connect wirelessly? Can you demo? I usually tether. It depends, Rocky, on the camera. But generally, what it involves is connecting your camera to an existing wireless network. and then Capture One, if it's on the same network, will just find and locate that camera, and you can shoot wirelessly. If you're out and about on location, as an example, then you might find it's worth investing in it in a small mobile router. So I've got a small one from TP-Link, which is very cheap, low cost. I think it was under $100/100 euros, 4G inside, so any SIM card in there gives me internet connectivity. It's a router which can connect up to 50 devices, so I can bridge that between iPad and camera, shoot wirelessly tethered to the iPad, and send to Capture One Live at the same time. So you've got like a really nice mobile solution there. This morning on our live stream, in the audience was Anas Hollander from Profoto, and he is shooting wirelessly with an R5 directly to an iPad as well. What I will say is to moderate your expectation of transfer speed if you're used to shooting with a cable. Obviously with a cable you saw how quick it was with USB. So wirelessly there's going to be a lot of factors which will depend on how fast it's going to be. So number of megapixels, it's going to be slower. Whether you send RAW or JPEG, RAW is obviously going to take longer than JPEG. The equipment, so if we take the Canon R5 as an example, the Canon R5 will happily wirelessly tether without any additional accessories. But if you buy the eye-wateringly expensive grip, which goes on the base of the camera, so not this one, this is the Fujifilm. Fujifilm also has a grip which adds additional wireless capability as well, which will help speed up the transfer rate. But on the R5 in particular, it will be way faster if you have that additional equipment. So if you just moderate what you're used to, if you're used to a USB connection, wireless is great because no one likes to run around outside with a cable dragging along the floor, especially if you're moving around working in a situation like that. But give it a test. Rocky, if you want to know how to connect up, then yeah, support page makes sense. Just going to check the last question, but I think we are pretty much covered, I would say. Dan actually was just mentioning it's a good yardstick for performance. Dan's bought an M2 iPad to use with the iPad app and my Sony A1, so I can shoot 50 megapixel files at 30 frames per second tethered, and it works flawlessly. So that's a really good indication of how powerful an M2 iPad is and how good Capture One for iPad is as well. So that's great to hear. All right, so thanks for joining me today. I hope that was useful. Sorry we couldn't go into depth with tethering. There is actually an older live stream about tethering on an iPad, and there is also a much shorter tutorial as well. But as you saw, it's pretty much plug and play. Connect the camera, make that collection, start shooting, and that's it. Same applies for wireless. I think it's really useful to make that wrong one, sorry. Oh, I disconnected the iPad, didn't I? Let's just go overhead. It's very useful to make that capture collection, I would say, because at least that way all your tethered shoots, if you've got loads of other files on the iPad, of course, it makes sense to keep them separate. Okay, thanks very much for joining me today. This went straight to YouTube, so you can always go back and pick up the recording if you wish as well. Thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend when it arrives. So take care. Bye now.